friend of mine always likes to talk about ARRI as like just kind of sitting up there on its throne in the clouds, just watching all the other camera companies fire larger and larger resolutions at each other in battles below. Well, ARRI just kind of does what it wants to and always just remains well above the fray. And what does that equal in terms of results for them? Well, the ARRI domination of the film industry for decades and delivering results that no one else has even come close to. And look, well, I have to admit, unless I'm doing something high-end project that requires that I use an ARRI, I doubt I'd have many reasons to use this camera in the work I do. And unless you work in specific industries, it's probably the same situation for you. And this is even before mentioning the amount of money you have to either rent or buy one outright. But just because you can't afford an ARRI or never need to use it doesn't mean that you shouldn't study ARRI and its cameras. Why study a camera you'll more than likely never use? Noise.
So the noise!
Not sensor noise. I'm talking about the noise of every other commercial camera company that is trying to get you to buy their product. With everyone and everything trying to sell you what's most important in cameras and what you need to have to be successful. With all this constant noise, opinion, and information that is being thrown at you, how do you know what's true and what's false? Well, you need a touchstone to ground yourself, to be able to filter that noise and have an informed perspective. And ARRI is an excellent source to look to. But why should ARRI be that touchstone for you? Well, it really comes back to the standard that they have stuck to since their creation in 1917. When its founders, August Arnold and Robert Richer, started the company in Germany before they were even legally old enough to sign their business documents. ARRI, over the course of its 100 years of existence, has maintained the idea that not only is film and video an art form, but making the machines is a high art form as well. And ARRI continued to prove itself decade after decade, even as cinema cameras constantly changed and eventually moved into the digital world, where ARRI, still to this day, dominates in the movie industry, being used in countless movies by countless award-winning directors and cinematographers, and in 2017 it was reported that ARRI was used in around 80% of all major productions. But ARRI isn't only in the camera game either. Dr. Pullman, the managing director of ARRI back in 2014, said that one of the key factors about ARRI is how unique a company it is. We are involved in almost all aspects of the motion picture industry. ARRI can provide the entire process from developing a camera all the way to releasing feature films into theaters. And I think this makes ARRI unique, from lights to lenses to post-production, VFX, editing, sound, distribution, and more. ARRI has its hand in almost every aspect of film. So great history lesson, right? ARRI is an established company. We know that already. What exactly should we be looking for from them as a touchstone? And again, this goes back to noise.
It's noise.
ARRI finds itself in an enviable position, being way above the fray, where many camera companies cannot necessarily take their time developing cameras and making sure that they are absolutely perfect. Kind of like, I would say, the GH6. They are all having to push the limits of current tech every time someone comes out with more resolution. The next camera company has to be able to prove that it can too.
I can do that.
Or face retribution from its base, the media and YouTubers for not being innovative enough. ARRI doesn't really have this issue. They barely have even gotten into the 4K game at this point, with a long-rumored ARRI Super 35 4K camera that has presumably been delayed as a result of the pandemic, was all of a sudden being teased yet again in the B-mount battery video that was just released recently. And we'll see if they actually get around to releasing the 4K Alexa this year. They really have the ability to sit back and make sure that the cameras they are making are as close to perfect as possible without outside pressure to release something now. Red Shark News a while back had toured their facility and found that one of the most interesting things about their process is that quality control is its own department in the company, and it only reports to senior management, which means that quality control can keep a camera from releasing until they are completely sure that the camera is ready. And their definition of ready means ready for anything. They even had their own incredibly stringent dynamic range charting process, and let's be honest, do we really trust Sony, Canon, or any other manufacturer when they tell us something has this incredible amount of dynamic range? Yeah. Because of this lack of outside pressure and their long history of being one, if not the best camera maker based on image quality, they have never been forced into new technology that would potentially take away from their standard of quality. Back in 2013, ARRI's managing director, Franz Cross, said that the perception of picture quality has a lot to do with the physical performance performance of the display. For example, a 2K image displayed on an HD OLED monitor looks incredible because the active light source shows far higher contrast ratios in the picture. He also noted that they were planning on releasing a 4K Alexa back in this time, but the outcome of an intensive feasibility study more than 2 years ago in 2011 showed that they would sacrifice dynamic range for resolution, and so they decided not to proceed. That's an interesting statement at the moment in time that 4K was starting to become incredibly popular. But they held back because to get that extra resolution everyone wanted, it would affect part of their quality control somewhere else. The tech just wasn't where they wanted it to be to transition. Now, I do want to mention that this positioning is not always great, as if you refuse to work with new tech and breakthroughs, you'll end up going the route of NASA, which has quickly become less relevant with private space companies pursuing things NASA said was a waste of time and proving them wrong. It's not to say that camera companies like Sony, Canon, Nikon, Blackmagic, and Red are bad or are making bad products. Far from it, especially considering their cameras aren't the price of a house. There is nothing wrong with autofocus. There's nothing wrong with expanding resolution. It's all a necessary evil to progress camera tech over the long run, and you need companies like that to push the limits, even if it's not quite time for it. But with ARRI, you have guiding foundational film and video principles that you can look to as a base point to view these other camera brands and sift through all of the nonsense technical specifications you get thrown your way. That doesn't matter every time a camera's released. Look at it from the filter of this is what ARRI does foundationally and philosophically, and that's absolute non-compromising quality first before anything else. So ask yourself the next time you consider buying that brand new 18K resolution camera. Am I investing in this camera because it actually helps me to further my quality of work and helps me to do my job better? Or do I just want it because it's new and it has fancy specs? If it fits with what you're doing, go for it. And then after that, the fringe tech that it offers is just extra on top, and can be fun to use. But the more you educate yourself from quality foundational sources, the better you'll be as a filmmaker, even if you only film in like corporate or contract work settings. Speaking of educating yourself, have you been watching our weekly Friday ungraded camera news show? Stay up to date with everything that's going on in the industry from week to week with this video right here. Subscribe to the channel.